Something extraordinary is happening in American politics right now, and if you blink, you might miss just how serious it really is. A sitting president of the United States has publicly threatened to destroy an entire civilization. Not quietly, not through back channels, not buried in a policy memo. Out loud. On social media. For the world to read. And now, members of his own government's constitutional system are pushing back in ways that would have seemed unthinkable just a few years ago. It started with a post. President Donald Trump took to his social media platform and wrote that Iran's, and I'm quoting his words here, whole civilization will die tonight, never to be brought back again, unless Iran agreed to a deal with the United States. He specifically threatened to destroy Iran's infrastructure if the Strait of Hormuz was not immediately reopened. These were not vague diplomatic signals or negotiating bluster buried in diplomatic fine print. They were direct, public, and attributed to the president of the most powerful country on earth. And the political fallout has been unlike anything in recent memory. Within hours, elected officials began speaking out, not in carefully worded press releases designed to avoid controversy, but in direct, urgent, and deeply alarming terms. More than 30 congressional Democrats publicly called on the cabinet to remove Trump from office. More than 80 House Democrats made social media posts explicitly stating that the cabinet should invoke the 25th Amendment, the constitutional provision that allows a president to be removed from power if they are determined to be unfit to carry out the duties of their office. That number is not a footnote. It is a signal of how seriously elected officials are treating what Trump wrote. Senator Ed Markey did not stop at expressing alarm. He laid out a detailed, dual-track constitutional strategy for removal. He called on the House of Representatives to reconvene for the specific purpose of passing articles of impeachment. He called on the Senate to convict and remove Trump from office. And he went further, stating explicitly that the cabinet should be prepared to invoke the 25th Amendment if congressional action moved too slowly. Stop and think about that for a moment. A sitting United States senator publicly outlined two separate constitutional removal pathways, simultaneously, in response to a single social media post by the president. That is not politics as usual. That is institutional alarm at a level that rarely surfaces in public life. Senator Chris Murphy was even more direct. He did not use the careful, hedged language that politicians typically reach for when discussing a sitting president's mental state. He stated flatly that no president in control of his senses would publicly pledge to erase an entire civilization. Read that again slowly. A United States senator said, in public, on the record, that the president is not in control of his mental faculties. He then backed the invocation of the 25th Amendment, connecting his assessment directly to the constitutional mechanism designed for exactly this scenario, a president who is unable to properly discharge the powers and duties of his office. This is not a soundbite. This is a formal judgment about presidential capacity delivered by an elected official under his constitutional oath. Representative Ro Khanna went even further in the legal framing of what Trump had said. He did not merely describe the civilization threat as reckless or dangerous. He characterized it as a clear violation of both the United States Constitution and the Geneva Conventions, the international agreements that govern how wars are fought and protect civilian populations from deliberate destruction. He called for the cabinet to invoke the 25th Amendment to remove a president who, in his words, had demonstrated he was unfit to serve. When a sitting member of Congress frames a presidential statement in terms of international humanitarian law, the same legal frameworks used to prosecute war crimes, the conversation has moved well beyond ordinary political disagreement. Congresswoman Deborah Ross from North Carolina joined the effort by pushing for a new independent commission specifically designed to invoke the 25th Amendment. She said Trump's latest actions and comments about the war in Iran raised serious questions about his fitness to serve, and called the establishment of this commission more urgent than ever. Meanwhile, Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez renewed impeachment calls even after Trump announced a ceasefire with Iran, making the argument that a pause in fighting does not erase the underlying constitutional concern. Trump launched military action, she argued, without valid congressional authorization. The ceasefire does not undo that. The constitutional clock does not stop because the shooting temporarily paused. Let us be honest about the full picture, because understanding this moment requires looking at every side of it clearly. Supporters of Trump will argue, and not without some basis, that political threats of this kind sometimes involve dramatic communication designed to signal resolve rather than announce literal intent. They will note that the constitutional mechanisms for removal are deliberately difficult to activate, requiring extraordinary procedural steps and political consensus that remains out of reach for now. They will contend that senators and representatives calling for removal are advancing a political agenda as much as a constitutional one. These points deserve acknowledgement. They are part of the honest conversation. But here is what makes the current situation harder to dismiss than critics might like. Trump himself, in a separate public moment, warned his own Republican allies that if the party loses the House in the midterms, Democrats will certainly find justification to impeach him. Those are his own words. He did not say they might try. He said they will. A president publicly predicting his own impeachment, while senators are simultaneously calling for his removal through dual constitutional pathways, is not a narrative that any messaging operation can easily contain. The vulnerability he warned his allies about is now playing out in real time, and the senators making formal constitutional judgments about his fitness are not doing so in private. The civilization destruction post was not an offhand remark. It was a deliberate act of public communication by the leader of the United States, and the response it triggered reveals something important about where American politics stands right now. The 25th Amendment exists precisely because the founders of the constitutional system understood that a moment might come when the normal mechanisms of political accountability were not enough, when the question was not whether a president had done something politically damaging, but whether he was capable of carrying out his duties without posing a danger to the country and the world. What is happening now is that elected officials from multiple states, across multiple chambers, drawing on multiple constitutional and legal frameworks, are publicly concluding that this moment may have arrived. That conclusion, reached openly, on the record, by people who took an oath to protect the Constitution, is the story. And it is not going away. If you want to stay ahead of stories like this one, the kind that shape history before most people even realize what is happening, subscribing to this channel is the single best thing you can do. Hit the subscribe button so you never miss a major development, because the next chapter of this story is already unfolding.